Hello, everyone. Hi. Welcome to
Hi.
another live session at Design Cuts. And today we have with us the wonderfully, awesomely talented Debi Sementelli. Debi, so nice to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. Before we get into everything, I do want to suggest that everybody download the freebie resources because you're going to be able to work right along with me using the Procreate tutorial. There's 10 stamps and brushes, and there's a print template. So it's all in there. So I want everybody to have it before we get into that. I want to tell you, first of all, what I'm going to take everybody through, because I like to tell you what I'm going to do it, and then kind of go over everything. So first of all, I'm going to take you through the sample guide that is included in the resources. And there are 17 of these in the kit. They are step-by-step. They have a color palette. And as I fit as much instruction as I could, these are not like full-blown tutorials, but there's enough in there to help people follow along. And I'm going to be creating video tutorials on my YouTube channel for each of these guides. So they'll have backup. If they're confused at all, they can go and watch me do it step by step. So some of the things we're going to be learning, and I really like to make sure that everything is good for beginners, because I think Procreate is such a fun tool. And I don't want people who have never been creative before to not think that they can't, do something in Procreate, like create a greeting card. So that's a lot of what comes with, why I do these sets, because I want to give people that creative outlet. So we are going to learn about reference, clipping mask, alpha lock, smudge, how to warp text, and how to select an object and move it on the layer. And I'm going to give them a process to follow that is takes out the confusion and makes it somewhat organized and like a easy step-by-step that is kind of fail-proof, that
Awesome.
that works for me. So what we're going to do, everybody should have this sample pack. And first thing I'm going to do is turn off the little yellow sticker there. So you'll see that you have a sample guide, and next to it, to the left, are the guide instructions. And if you look down on your sample kit, you'll see that there is also this background. And then further down, there are printing instructions, so that when you're all done, you can go to this and you can look at how to print directly from your iPad. Not everybody's going to have this option, but if you do, the instructions are there, or from your computer, or print with a local printer. So that's already in every one of the kits. So now let me turn that on.
Cool. And the full product's got a lot of support for that kind of thing, hasn't it? And pre-made canvases at different sides, and crop and bleed, and you've really covered the bases.
Right. And everybody's going to have that print template as well that we'll be able to copy and paste your final piece into. Okay, so we're going to take the sample guide, very first thing, and we're going to reduce the opacity down. And I put it at about 25%. You can put it wherever it's comfortable for you. Because what this is going to allow us to do is to stamp the layers. And hold on. And you can see then where you're putting the stamp. Now, in your kit, let me go up here. You will see that I've already stamped all of these layers, because pretty much everybody knows how to stamp layers, but I've left the banner so that I can show you how to stamp it and put it at the correct percentage. One thing about Procreate, if you stamp it and then you have to either enlarge it or reduce it, you're going to lose some of the crispness. So it's really important to try to stamp it at this size that you want it. So I've already given you those sizes. So if we look at step 2, there's banner 8 at 38%. Okay, so so what I did, if you did not see that, I came over to this little slider at the top and I chose 38%. And now, and I'm just going to do a, add a layer in here. Oops. Oh, there it is. Okay. So I'm going to banner 8 and I'm going to stamp that. And now you can see how the sample guide allows me to guide it into place. Now, it would look like we have a big mess here, but what we're going to actually do, the process that I'm taking you through, is that I first stamp all of the stamps, kind of like get it all out there. And then I draw any additional lines, which we're going to draw those 5 lines. And I'm going to show you. Okay, so I've drawn 3 of them. And what I've done in the kit that I've given you, I've also made a copy of the technical pen that is native to the Procreate set and the soft brush that is also from the Procreate set. And I just made a copy and put them into my demo set. So you can use any monoline pen that you want and any brush, soft brush like that you want. And so we're just going to come in here, and I think we've got this about 27%.
Oh.
So we're just, as you know, when you draw a line, or you may not know, you simply draw it and hold it, and then you can move it anywhere you want. So we've got that taken care of now. So that's the first step in this process, is to stamp everything. And I've also got a second set of stamps down here. I'm not turning them on. I'll turn them on just to show you. I've got all the clouds on on individual layers. I've got the landscape on individual layers. And I always stamp everything on its own layer so that you really have more flexibility. So let's look at the next thing that we're going to do. If you look at step 8 in the guide, it says color inside spaces, and this is where you're going to use the reference tool. So here's my process that I think is genius, if I say so myself. So you can see for each stamp, for instance, you have the party hat stamp here. For each stamp, I have a reference layer below, and I have a clipping mask layer above, because you always put the reference layer below and you always put the clipping mask layer above. And you can see the difference in the clipping mask is it has the little arrow. So I've gone, and for each stamp, I've created a clipping mask above, and not every stamp takes that. Generally, it depends on, you know, what stamps you're using, but most of them you're going to use a clipping mask and probably a reference. So and then you can see in the frame, I have 2 references. One is for shading, one is just regular coloring in. So that's that process going all the way down. I do that for each stamp. And this is how I would suggest that you set up your file as well, so that no matter what you're doing, it's easy to get confused in Procreate through all the layers. You know, you just keep adding layers and throwing things in there. But this kind of keeps you somewhat organized.
This is very neat and tidy, and I've seen other designers on these sessions where they're not so neat and tidy. Mention no names.
Well, you know what? It's one of those things where everybody has their process, and you know, whatever works for you. But I actually kind of came up with this because I was trying to think of how can I show a beginner like the easiest way to work in these layers to keep it organized and to not, you know, get so confused. And that kind of is what caused me to really come up with this system more than anything else. So now we're going to start using the reference tool, and I'm not going to like go through every single layer and color every single layer, kind of like the cooking shows. I have a baked cake already coming out of the oven, already decorated, but I'm going to just demonstrate the main things so that people get the idea of what to do and how to do it. So we're going to start with the heart balloon, and we're going to click on it, and you'll see that list come up, and you're going to click on reference. So now anything below this, you're going to be able to color on. Never color on the actual stamp itself, always color on the reference layer below. And I'm going to the one that just says ref. And you can color on that layer and it will fill in your space. And I've given you this color palette, and if you don't know, you can just press on one with your finger and it automatically changes the color up at the top right. So we have our color and we have our balloon, and now we're on the right layer, and we're just going to drag that in there. And let me do that again because I want to demonstrate something. So if we move our pencil to the right, it fills in more of the object. So if you ever find that you're, not getting that filled in, that's a good thing to do. And I am going to turn, off just the things that were a little bit in the way. Now I've still got a little bit left because by the time that I moved my pencil, I didn't start all the way to the left. I started kind of midpoint. So I ran out of screen. So now I'm just going to take my technical pen and, make it a little bit larger. And again, I'm still on that same reference layer, and I'm just going to come in and fill in the rest of this. I can go a little bit bigger. And again, it doesn't matter what brush you use, whatever brush you're comfortable with, just a simple, smooth brush works well. Okay, and what I want to point out is that I've already used halftones to shade virtually almost all of the stamps, because if you're in a hurry or you don't feel comfortable with shading, you can just stamp it and color it and you're good to go. It's still going to look good.
And Debbie, I remember how painstakingly carefully you took those halftones in as well.
Oh yeah.
Remember that? Ooh.
Yes. So because we
So
also
carefully.
have all of these images are also available in Illustrator, in EPS and PNGs. So the wonderful Dave Williams did all of those conversions for me. Thank you, Dave. And so those are also available for you. So we've got our pink heart in there. And so now we can go up and we're going to look at the next available stamp, which is the banner. Oh, I just realized, okay, here's a rookie mistake, but good thing that I can show you this. Whoops. So I was on the banner layer when I drew those lines. Okay, Debbie. And don't erase the banner.
It would never happen where you're not actually talking at the same time as doing it. It's so much more difficult, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Trying to make sure you're doing everything.
No.
And then you're like, oh, mess that up.
So hard.
The good news is I do have some drawn lines already done. So we'll just plug those in there. Okay, so now we have our banner and we want to color our banner. So again, we're going to come up here and we're going to choose the reference. And this time I'm going down again to that reference layer, not the smudge, that's for shading. And this time I'm going to choose the white and make sure we're on the right layer. Always do that. Go in here, go in here. So you can see there was really no need for me to go in and erase. And that's probably something that's more of the line on that banner layer, I think. So yeah, it's here. So we'll just go and erase that. So these things happen to everybody. All right. So we're back on the reference layer, and you can see that we have to come in here and color a little bit more on this upper right part of the banner. Let's make sure we have the right brush. And we are good there. Make sure everything is filled in here and here. You can always come in. Okay. And we've got a little bit down here. So sometimes, especially when you have halftones, your stamp will not fill in as much as it would normally because it's kind of trying to work around those halftones. But you'll see that there are parts that go inside the heart that I'm not bothering to color because we're going to erase those eventually. So we are now moving up, and you'll see we would do the same thing with the cake. We would turn on reference because reference can only be on one layer at a time. And it's really important to turn off reference once you're done, because otherwise everything else you do will be using that layer as its reference, and you'll wonder what was happening. Like, why is this not filling in right? That's the case. So imagine that we did this to the cake, and we did it to the frame, and we did it to the party hat. There we go. And now we're going to work our way down. So now we're going to use the clipping mask. So let's do reference for the party hat and color that in so that then we can use the clipping mask and it will demonstrate a little bit better. So I'm going to color in, and again, I'm moving the Apple Pencil to the right so that it colors in more. And I'm going to change color to the blue. And remember that, oops, that's not where I want it. Reference only colors in spaces. So that's a space. That's a space. It won't color the solid black because it's not meant for that. That's what clipping masks are meant for. So all I'm going to be able to do is color in anything that has a blank space inside. I'm going to change colors again, and I'll just go here. So now we've done all the filling in on our party hat. Now we're working our way down the layers, and we're going to now add the clipping mask. So remember the difference. Clipping mask fills in solid lines and shapes, while reference fills in empty blank spaces. So that is the basic difference between them. I know sometimes people get confused, but that is the basic difference between them. So now I've changed to this green color. I'm getting my technical pen again, and I am going to color in, and you can see I can just run my Apple Pencil over it because it is only going to color in those spaces. It's not going to color the blue because those are blank spaces. Now, so again, I'm just going and I'm actually dragging and dropping. I don't want to drag and drop to the dots that are on the edges because those are connected to the hat line, and I kind of want to keep that black. So I'm just going in with the brush and hand coloring those. So there is our basic hat for coloring. And again, we've got, if you look at the hat, we've got the clipping mask that is coloring in the solid lines. We've got the reference mask that is coloring in the spaces. And again, we just go down the list and we do the same thing for each of these items. So it's that easy, in a sense, to keep track of things when you set it up like this. Now, I want to show you another little demonstration. Oh, hold on.
This is giving me cake cravings, Debbie. I'm thinking I've got lemon drizzle stuck in my head currently.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
I love it. That's my favorite cake to make.
Yum. You make it yourself?
I do.
I'm pretty impressed with that. Okay, so once we've gotten our main balloon done, I like to group those layers together. So you'll see I've got them all grouped together. And that way, if I need to toggle off of them because I want to see the clouds, I can. I'm going to get rid of this and we're going to toggle off of that. So here is our stamp, the party hat. The clipping mask always goes above. It has the little arrow. The clipping mask only affects the solid lines and shapes. So in this party hat, the solid lines and shapes were those that we colored, were the dots and the green, all the green dots and stripes. When you go below the party hat, that's the reference layer. And you can see those are the empty spaces. If we did not have that there, you can see right through it. So reference is always filling in spaces, empty spaces. Clipping mask is always filling in solid lines and shapes. Okay, so I was going to toggle off that, and now let's say I like to do this where I put in my background next, and the background is always going to go be underneath layer-wise your main object in the foreground, which is our balloon. So I always like to stamp on separate layers because that way, if you wanted to, and I'm going to show you because I stamped the landscape as well. So you can see that there's a clash. Let me see which one that is. I think that's it. Yes. So there's a clash between this cloud and the cloud that is in the landscape. So I can make a decision if I want to get rid of that, or if I want to, oops, or if I want to move it on the wrong layer. And this can be like difficult to go, which cloud was that? So I can move it. And I kind of like having all those clouds in there. So I'm just going to move it. But that gives me the flexibility. Now, when I want to color the clouds, it's better to combine them together. So you can pinch these. I'm not going to say I always have success. Let's see. All right, it did work. But if you don't, I'm going to undo that so that you can see if for some reason you sometimes are clumsy like me and you cannot pinch those things, you can simply merge down. You could actually put them in a group and then flatten it. So there's 3 different ways. Pinch it, merge each layer down, or put them in a group and flatten. So now we have our clouds right where we want them. Well, actually, this bottom one is actually still bothering me because it's hitting the cloud on the bottom. But because they are on one layer, I can now grab the select tool, which is kind of like the S at the top. And I'm going to select this one cloud. And now I'm going to go to the arrow, which is the transform tool. And I'm going to slowly move that. So now it's not clashing with that bottom cloud. And that was one of the things that I wanted to demonstrate for you. So just know that you can do that even when things are on the same layer. You can select and transform it and move it. So now I'm going to demonstrate another one of the things that we talked about, which is the alpha lock and fill layer to change the color of the objects on the layer. So I just want these clouds to be white. So I can go actually to the white background And I've changed the color up at the top, right-hand corner to white. I'm now going on that cloud layer, and I'm going to alpha lock. And now I'm going to tap again, and I'm going to fill layer. And you can see all the clouds are now white. And alpha lock fill layer, you will use this a lot because sometimes you decide, I don't really like that color, I want to change it. And it's always a good thing to just, use alpha lock, keep everything on its own layer until you're absolutely happy with everything at the end. Now, I always undo alpha lock, and it's not, it won't get you in as much trouble as the reference layer, but I think, I don't want to chance it. So I always turn that off. Now we can look at the landscape, which is the other part of our background. And again, I want to change that. I've initially pretty much stamped everything in black. I think it's easier to do that and then change the color layer later. But sometimes if you know what color you want something to be in, you can stamp it in that color. So we're going to change this to the blue. So I'm changing the color to blue. And again, I simply tap on the layer and choose alpha lock. I tap again and fill layer. And now my background is blue. Now, I really don't want these clouds at the top of the above the water that are in the landscape. I don't want those to be blue. I want them to be white. So instead of, I'm going to turn off my alpha lock. Instead of, trying to totally change that by stamping again the landscape in white and eliminating the other one, I'm just going to create a clipping mask. So I go up here and click on clipping mask, and I think I should be okay from there. I always wonder about that if I have to be right next to it, but I think I'm good. Let's see if that works. I'm going to get my technical pen, and I'm going to go on the clipping mask layer. No, there we go. Oops. Well, there you go. So I need to go move this directly above the demo landscape. So there you go. And we're just going to, okay. Clipping mask was not on. Once I moved it, it changed. So I'm going to just clear that for a second. Okay, so our clipping mask layers here, we have clipping mask on. So let's try this again. And there we go. So now we're turning our cloud white. And I know eventually I'm going to erase this part that's overflowing, so I don't have to worry about that. So there we go. We've made our clouds white. Now I'd like to change the tops of the trees to this green. And because they are not real close to each other, you could do them on the same layer, or you could create another clipping mask. This one says trees. And this time, to fill them in, I'm just going to take this soft brush. And again, this is from Procreate. And that way I can kind of, if I want to, leave some a little bit darker. I might make it more green on the outsides and leave it a little bit blue on the inside. All right. And we can continue filling in by getting our sand color. Now, because these are spaces down here at the bottom where our sand would be, we're going to create a reference layer. And I'm using the soft brush. And again, the reference layer is below, but I have to turn on reference on the actual stamp layer. So I've got everything in place. Go back to that layer below, grab our brush, and I might even want to put some color inside the trees. And again, because those are empty spaces, that's what works on that layer. Now, let's say I want to add a little bit more blue. I can come back here. I'm still on this reference layer because the ocean is pretty much blank space. So we're going in with the bigger brush. And I'm trying to keep my colors soft because this is a background. So I don't want it to compete with the foreground. And that's one of the ways that you make that differentiation, by having stronger colors in the foreground and lighter colors in the background when you're trying to create a scene like this. And I might even want to add some white for the waves. And again, I'm still on that reference layer below because these are blank spaces. Let me reduce that down a little bit. And I created all of these drawings so that you could color really loosely and it's still going to look good. So it's like, again, don't worry about perfection. This is more about connection. I hope that when you are creating these cards, you're thinking about the people that are going to be receiving them and thinking how excited they will be that you took the time to personally create something for them. Because we all need that.
Homemade cards are always best, aren't they?
I know, they're fantastic. And I just, I love the idea that no matter who you are and what your skill level is, this kit gives you everything you need so that you too can create things. Now, the other thing I'm going to add here is a cake shadow. So this is pretty simple, and I'm putting it on its own layer. But again, I'm going to turn off reference because otherwise that cake shadow is going to be affected by that. And I'm going to change back to the blue. Let me see, I think blue was our other color, our last color. So if you don't know, you can click on, if you see what I just did there, up the upper right-hand corner, the color, little color dot. When you click on it, it will go to the last color that you used. So that way you don't have to go back and select the other one. We're going to use the soft brush for this, and I've kind of got it about 5%. And the great thing is, and we're on our cake layer, so it's a separate layer. We can go here and make an oval and kind of hold it. I don't like how that turned out as well, so I'm going to do that again, make an oval and hold it. That's not bad. And I think I want it to be a little bit less opacity, less dark. So I'm going to just turn the opacity down. And if I wanted to make that shadow a little bit smaller, as I do, because the higher up that the cake is, the smaller the shadow will be, I kind of like it about like that. Now, I'm going to point out there is a sailboat that's right in where that cake is, but we don't even have to go in and erase that, because once we have colored in our cake, it's just going to automatically color it color over it, or it's going to obstruct the view of it. So you don't have to worry about doing anything like that. So we've kind of filled in our background, and again, with the clouds, let's say we want to add some filler to them. So they are empty, so we're going to use reference. We're going to create a layer underneath, and I always like to just name it. And we'll go to our white, and we can just toggle that color. Let's see. There we go. We'll toggle the color. This soft brush is really a handy thing for things like this. It is for a lot of things, but I kind of like it for this. And we'll just go in and just add a little bit of white. I've kind of got my, I'm going to turn off my sample. Oops. Where are we, Debbie? Oh, okay. I'm not going to be able to see it if I do that. Let's not do that. All right. So I think you can kind of see that I'm just adding some white there. So basically, we just keep going up and down our layers. So we have, let's say we have our demo clouds all done. We have our demo landscape all done. Each of these, again, will have stamps with a reference below and clipping mask above. And anything else we want to add on a separate layer, because it's not really necessary to use anything to reference the cake. So we can just put that on a separate layer. Go back to our demo balloons, and you'll see, again, every single stamp has a clipping mask and a reference layer. So in the end, turn off all of that. This is what it might look like. And this is with shading, which we've added, and I used in your kit. We have the noisy shader, and we have the Riso halftone. So what I'm going to do is show you now how to use those. So let's say we want to add on the heart balloon. I've got right here, but I'm going to add a layer there to demonstrate. So let's say we want to add some of the Riso halftone, a little bit more to pump up those shadows. We simply change the color, go to Riso halftone, you don't need it to be really big. Make sure that we're on this color. And I'm going to put the reference on the heart balloon and just put demo here so I know where I'm at. Okay. And we can just come in with that, and it adds just a little bit more, just kind of bumps it up. That's easy peasy adding shadow. Now, because the banner is on top of the heart, let's say we want to add some shadows where the banner would be showing. So again, we can simply go to, I like the soft brush for that. And you can, if you want to do it on a separate layer, you can. I think in this case, we're going to do it on the same layer because it's kind of, it's hard to screw this up. I'm just going to say, really, because it's just going in, except make it a little bit smaller. So we're just following the lines. And just adding a little bit of shadow there. And again, if you're sending this to someone, you know, they're not going to open it up and go, the shadows aren't quite right. I'm going to send it back, you know. So I think everybody needs to like make sure to not worry that you have everything perfectly done. It's not about perfection, it's about connection. So that's what that would look like. And I want to check and make sure that, okay. So then the next thing that we would do, and I'm going to turn on my completed background now. So now let's say we've got, oh, and let's turn on those lines again, the drawn lines. All right. So now we've got everything colored in. We've used the clipping mask, we've used reference, we've brought in shading through the noisy shader, through the Riso halftone, through the soft brush. And now we want to add our lettering. So of course, we wanted to give you as much lettering as possible. So we created 50 different phrases that are most popular for most people. And happy birthday, of course, is what we're using for this one. So this is actually Jimbo's Valent font, and it's really great for Procreate because it's nice and thick, and so it gives you a lot to play with. So I'm going to demonstrate now how to select each one of these words and place it in the banner, and then how to warp it so that it fits a little bit better in the banner. So we make sure we're on the correct. All right, so we're on the correct layer. We again go up to the S select tool, and I'm going to start with happy. So I'm going to select it and go to the arrow transform tool, and I'm going to change it just slightly so it's on the right angle. I'm going to move it up, and you just try to see like what's the best angle to put that in there. So that looks about right. And I think I'm going to scale it in just a little bit. And this is never going to be perfect. The warp tool is great, but this is not for a professional project. You would never use the warp tool for a professional project because it's just not as exact, and it's going to take away some of the crispness from your letters, because anytime you do any changes in Procreate, that happens. But again, no one receiving the card is going to say, it's not quite crisp enough. So the key here is to actually move very slowly. And what I like to do is look at the angle of the banner and start to follow that angle, slowly moving these individual blue dots so that it's starting to follow in that same shape.
I was just going to say, Debbie, if the session's running a little bit longer than they normally do, but so if you can't make it all the way to the end of the session, don't worry, it will be available in the Learning Hub afterwards.
Great.
I'm sure the vast majority of people want to sit like I do and watch the end of the session, though.
Great.
But
well, the good thing is
reduce that anxiety.
Yes, thank you. I do have completed text, and that's using the Valent font. And because Design Cuts is going to be having their 8th birthday coming up,
Can't believe it.
I know. I use Design Cuts. And as you can see, basically I created, and we'll take that off, I created a layer that has the happy birthday phrase. And then I gave myself 2 options. Well, I chose this one, so. So I gave myself the Design Cuts using the actual font. So you would need to purchase the Valent font to do this, but you could use another font and it would be absolutely fine. You could also hand letter it if you wanted to. So once I got everything in place, then I went ahead and duplicated the layer and changed the color. So that's right here. And then finally, I just went in with that very same technical pen and with this white color. And I added, go right here. And I simply added a little bit of pressure in the middle. That's a little bit too much, but I just added a little bit of pressure and released, and then hold it straight. And what's fun is I love to do inlays. So you can do any kind of fun things that you want, including creating a little circle in the middle there. You can see I added those to some of the letters. So that is one of your options. And then the next option would be if you wanted to hand letter it all, you could also do that. So the last thing I'm going to just tell you is that you would take your print template and you would, from your finished piece, just highlight all the layers, swipe 3 fingers, and then just copy and paste it into your template. And this is what it would look like. And you can arrange it so that you just have the crop marks, you turn off the guidelines, and you can even create a little text that you could put on the back of the card that says created just for you by, and then you would have some cards like these.
Awesome.
And that is it. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Matt.
Thank you ever so much, Debbie. Take care. Take care, everyone.
Okay.
It's lovely to see you. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.